Should I have stayed in Toronto? It's the question I keep returning to. Had I known what awaited me in Millhaven, I would have kept every possible distance between myself and that town. But if I could erase it all now, would I? I would be happier, perhaps, but it would be a lie. Is having your eyes open worth being forced to sleep with them open? At the end of the day, it's my work. It's the life I chose, and I regret nothing about it. I believe that secrets, especially the darkest ones, deserve to be brought into the light. So this is me, bringing them there. Journaling began as something my therapist suggested, but it quickly became essential to my work as a detective, sorting feeling from fact, keeping things from becoming personal. Its success rate varied. But here it became a way of compiling the events of last summer as I lived through them. As of today, and as I begin putting it all down, my birthday was 3 days ago. I received a wool sweater, women's small, a replacement for one I lost. On my birthday the year before, the only gift I gave myself was a decision. Moving to Millhaven, Nova Scotia, a place I'd always loved since visiting as a child. I drove up on a clear Wednesday morning. Marsh, my partner of 3 years in Toronto, followed in his pickup with most of my furniture. I had accumulated enough goodwill with that man to call in the favor. The air improved steadily. The roads did not. When I reached the first long stretch of open farmland, I knew I had chosen right. I drove with the windows down for hours, no playlist needed. Just the rushing wind and the smell of grass and earth and life. I'd take country air over city exhaust any morning of the week. We arrived Thursday evening, and Marsh was gone by Friday morning. No ceremony, just a firm handshake and a good luck. And there I was, home, in a one-bedroom unit of a modest four-suite building. Quaint, sensible, and considerably cheaper than anything I'd left behind. My landlady, Mrs. Calloway, appeared within the hour. Warm, unhurried, the sort of woman who made you feel welcome without trying. Best to get unpacking done right away, she said. Put it off one day, then 1 week, and before you know it, 2 years have passed and those boxes are still sitting right there. You're not wrong, I replied, doing my best to match her warmth. More coming, or is this the lot? This is everything. My goodness, travel light, don't you? It's easier that way, I suppose. And what do you do for work, dear? I'm an RCMP detective. Just transferred here. Her eyes lit up like I'd told her I was royalty. Well, I feel 10 times safer already. I expected that sort of reaction. I didn't exactly fit whatever image people carried of rural law enforcement, but her sincerity charmed me completely. She pulled me into a brief hug and told me her door was always open. Unpacking would have to wait. Sightseeing too. I laid out my bare essentials and prepared for work. No rest for the wicked. Perhaps I would have savored that evening more had I known it was my last quiet one, before it all unraveled, before the case, the nightmares, the girl who wasn't missing, before Candle Caine. I woke 2 minutes before my 5 o'clock alarm. Nerves, most likely not something I usually allowed. I was grateful for the silence, at least. A small, clean moment before the work began. The best way to manage nerves is to stay in your routine, so I did. 15 push-ups, 15 sit-ups, 15 lunges, 15 squats, 3 30-second planks, then stretches. Early light cut through the blinds in thin orange lines across the far wall. It made the bare room feel less sparse. I made a mental note to unpack more as soon as I could manage it. I showered, brushed my teeth, applied minimal makeup, concealer and mascara. I rarely bothered, but first impressions matter. I had enough foresight to pack granola bars and a small coffee maker. It would do. I left before 7 and arrived at my new headquarters 10 minutes later. Good morning, miss. How can I help you? The receptionist greeted me. A woman teetering on retirement, all warmth and drawl. Daria Ash, just transferred. I'm to see the chief inspector. Oh, Miss Ash. We weren't expecting you until 8. I can wait if you'd prefer. Heavens, no. He's not doing anything pressing. She turned and called back. Larry, I've got Miss Ash out here. Out from an interior door came a broad man in a dress shirt and tie, large, composed, with a smile that was professional rather than warm. Ash, right this way. He held the door and I followed. We walked past cubicles and offices, Functionally, it resembled my previous posting. Aesthetically, it was far more lived in, a little rough around the edges. I like that. The atmosphere felt human rather than institutional. My first impression of the staff, unhurried, the chief inspector. Beebit gestured for me to sit across from him. Welcome to Millhaven. How are you finding things so far? Peaceful, sir. Very different from Toronto. That it is, but it's not all backwater out here, you know. You'll find kindred spirits. Your new partner, for instance, came from Manhattan. He continued, leaning back. His last partner moved on. He's got a straightforward assignment at the moment. Good starting point. You'll shadow him, learn how things work here. He's been here a long time. Sounds good, sir. Wonderful. His name's Hollis. Big fellow, beard, bit of gray coming through. You'll spot him. I stepped back out among the cubicles. Almost every man I could see was large, bearded, and graying. I chose to use my ears instead and listen for the accent. No, condensed milk is sweetened. Evaporated is not. Not him. $200. And last time it was, not him. Over time, and he had the puck, the whole definitely not. I swear if you call them Uggs one more time. That's the one. I waited for him to finish his aggrieved exchange, then approached. Excuse me. Are you Hollis? The man turned slowly. He was built like a filing cabinet and carried himself like he'd been annoyed by something for at least a decade. Mid-40s with a jaw like weathered stone and a nose that had clearly lost a few arguments. His eyes were dark, sharp, and framed by unexpectedly long lashes. His undercut was graying at the sides and looked like it had not seen a comb in weeks. The hell did you call me? He said. I'm new, the chief inspector said. Yeah, new detective. First of all, it's not Hollis. Never Hollis. It's Detective Greer. Show some respect. He said it like he was very much used to not receiving any. Detective Greer. Daria Ash, nice to meet you. I extended my hand. He looked at it, did not take it. You briefed on the case? No, sir. I was told you'd handle that. Greer laughed, a sound like gravel in a can, and said, Course he did. I'll catch you up in the car. He stood and walked, and I followed. He was going to be a trial to work with. That much was obvious. But I'd had difficult partners before. What threw me was the contradiction of him, the street-worn New Yorker somehow at home in rural Canada. I found myself wondering what had brought him here, if it was the same thing that brought me. His car was an old tan vehicle of indeterminate make, clearly from some decade that remembered disco fondly. I climbed into the passenger seat. Let me ask you something, Ash. Go ahead. You're young. You're on all the social media stuff? Not particularly, but you know about it. A little. Fine. Here's the situation. He settled into his seat. This case is nothing. A mother tries to file a missing persons report on her daughter, gone 8 weeks. Except the daughter isn't missing. She's in Paris, actively posting videos online, has a huge following, the whole thing. Mother knew about the trip. She just doesn't want to accept it. So why is it a case? It's not. The mother's refusing to let it go. We're going out there to close it. That's it. Questions? I shook my head. Good. I wasn't going to answer them anyway. We drove in near silence. I tested the water. You're not from here, I take it. Detective of the decade, ladies and gentlemen. That one response told me everything I needed. He was caustic, yes. But he was also a deflector, a joker, someone who hid behind thorns. I recalibrated. Don't take him too seriously, don't be intimidated, and don't lose your composure. What brought you here? I tried again. Christ, Ash. You want my biography? We're going to be working together. Not for long, trust me. I let it sit. We arrived at a modest 2-story house. Hang back, don't speak, Greer said, climbing out. With any luck, we put this to bed in 20 minutes. The door was opened by a woman in her late 40s, composed in the way that people are when they've been fighting to stay composed. A look of sustained worry had taken up permanent residence on her face. Well, she stepped aside without ceremony. How are you, Miss Evander? Greer said, softening visibly. She glanced at me. New partner? Fresh transfer. She's shadowing. Wonderful. I'm glad you're out here training people while my daughter is missing. Now, Miss Evander, you know I take this seriously, but I need you to help me understand. Mara's in Paris. She's posted today. She's not missing. She is missing, the woman's voice cracked. I don't care what those videos show. Something is wrong? Greer pulled out his phone and played a clip. The Eiffel Tower, unmistakably in the background. When did you last speak to her? I asked. Greer shot me a look. I met it calmly. A few days ago. She always finds a reason to end the call quickly. Too busy, too tired. Always something. And the texts? Normal. That's just it. They're too normal. She tells me not to worry. She's fine. Everything's fine. But Mara doesn't talk to me like that. She's distant, like she's going through the motions. What makes you most certain something is wrong? This trip came from nowhere. No warning, 2 days notice, then she was gone, and none of her friends knew about it. I called them. None of them. It just doesn't fit. And then once she left, it's like I stopped being her mother. I get facts from her now. I went here. I did this. Not how she talks. You think she's hiding something. Mara doesn't hide things from me. She never has. Whoever is in those videos is not my daughter, Greer suggested, calling her then and there. Miss Evander dialed. On the second attempt, someone answered. Hey, Mom. A young woman's voice, easy and warm. The call proceeded as one might expect. Mara sounded fine. Slightly embarrassed, a bit exasperated, reassuring her mother in all the right ways. She mentioned that her online work had taken off financially and she'd seized the opportunity to travel. She ended the call affectionately. Greer spread his hands. She's fine. There's nothing here for us to do. Miss Evander sighed deeply, searching for words she couldn't find. We left shortly after. What did I say about not talking? Greer said as we returned to the car. I gathered more information, I replied without apology. Good for you. First day in and already making your own rules. I wasn't under the impression you outranked me. Greer looked at me sideways. You want the truth? You know why they put you with me? It's not because we're both from the city. It's because nobody else wants you here. Sooner you figure that out and move on, the better it'll be for both of us. He was probably right. But it changed nothing. I'm not leaving, I said, getting into the car. Greer got in, stared forward for a moment. Then you might want to consider what it says about them, thinking I'd be the one to drive you out. I have considered it, and it says they chose someone who's also a moody prick, but at least a professional one. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. Yeah, probably. The rest of the day was uneventful, and the friction between us had eased. Not disappeared, but eased. I returned to my apartment that night, relieved to be done with it, and yet I couldn't stop thinking about the case. Technically, it was closed before it ever truly opened. But something nagged at me. I unpacked my laptop and pulled up Mara's online presence. Not entirely sure what I was looking for. The follower count was substantial. She was approaching 100,000. Remarkable for a young woman from a small Nova Scotian town. She'd mentioned an online business on the call. The way she said it, glancing over it, hedging, told me what it probably was. A minute of searching confirmed it. Alternate profiles, private subscription services, the kind of content she clearly kept separate from her public face. Fair enough, I wasn't judging. I only wondered how much of that her mother knew. My working theory formed quickly. The Paris trip was a content collaboration. She'd networked with other creators and gone abroad to film. The evasiveness made sense. She didn't want her mother knowing the specifics. That tracked. Case closed. But I allowed myself one more step. I wanted to directly compare a Paris vlog with one from the month prior. Look for behavioral shifts, tonal changes, anything off. To the naked eye, nothing remarkable. Her mood seemed consistent, her editing style unchanged, her voice the same. Location data confirmed Paris. It was airtight. I cycled through more of her older videos after that. Not for any investigative reason, just because I found myself unable to stop. They had a warmth to them. She spoke to the camera like it was a friend. The comments ranged from thoughtful to ghastly, the way comment sections always do. She was undeniably compelling. Bright blue eyes that the camera loved. Her older videos felt sincere in a way that her Paris ones, now that I was looking, did not quite match. Something was missing. Not in a way I could name precisely. A texture, maybe. A presence. I told myself it was time to sleep. The case was closed. I needed to let it go. I didn't sleep well. The second day in Millhaven passed in a quiet rhythm. The contrasting caseload between here and Toronto couldn't have been sharper. Fewer calls, smaller scale, more patience required. Greer was marginally less hostile, which I chose to interpret as progress. The third day brought something else entirely. A call came in early. Disturbance at a local soup kitchen called Blessings, housed in a refurbished building a few streets off the main road. A man in crisis, reportedly armed. Greer and I were nearby and responded. The shouting was audible from outside. Inside, an older man in worn, threadbare clothing stood backed into a corner of the dining area, a kitchen knife held at arm's length. Staff had retreated to a loose perimeter, palms raised, speaking softly. His eyes were bloodshot and frightened. Greer cleared the staff back. I moved into the man's eye line. "It's inside me," he screamed. "They're poisoning me. The bees. The queen's bees. They sting my brain and eat the pollen. They want me to do it, but I won't. I won't." I've heard manic episodes before. This felt different in ways I couldn't immediately name. "What is your name?" I called out through his shouting. "My name? Why do you want my name?" "Because I'd like to talk. Just talk. What's your name?" "Emery. Emery." "My name is Daria. I need you to take a breath for me. You don't want to hurt anyone, do you?" "No. No, I never wanted to hurt anyone." "Then give me the knife, that's all. I can't help you while you're holding it." He shook. He wept. I took a slow step forward, and he let me. "Everyone will melt in the dark," he whispered. "An eye for an eye. The window is open. And the girl—" "The girl?" I said quietly. "She's not missing, but she's gone." The words landed strangely. Too specific, too directed. "Who? What girl?" "One eye missing, one eye gone. One eye open, two eyes closed. They melt her. They melt her. They melt her." He trailed into murmuring, and then in a voice suddenly very still said, "I now belong to Candle Caine." He turned the knife on himself before I could close the distance. I reached him in seconds, but it was too late. The wound was deep. He was gone within minutes. The ambulance came. Greer and I stayed to speak with the staff and the owner, a thin, soft-spoken older man named Roy Whitaker, who confirmed that Emery had been a regular. "Did he have family nearby?" Greer asked. "He always talked about his niece. She lives somewhere else, I think. He was saving up for her birthday." Whitaker paused, visibly shaken. He had been clean. He was doing so well. Greer placed a hand on the man's shoulder. "You do real good work here, Roy. Call us if anything comes to mind." Outside, we stood in the quiet air for a while. "First time seeing someone die?" Greer asked. "No." "You did all right, Ash." A pause. Then, "The things he said, guy was gone, completely unmoored. I know, but I've seen acute episodes before. Bad trips, full psychosis. Something about this was different. And what is Candle Caine? Have you ever come across it?" "Sounds like something off a cereal box. Could have meant candy cane." The guy was not coherent. "It didn't feel like that in context." "We'll look into it," Greer said, with the air of a man who expected to find nothing. "But sometimes people do terrible, senseless things, and we never get a tidy answer. Be prepared for that. He wasn't wrong. I just wasn't willing to stop there yet. She's not missing. But she's gone." I couldn't shake it. I kept thinking of Mara Evander. But we already knew where she was. We'd spoken to her. There was no case. So who was he talking about? I didn't handle uncertainty well. It burrowed into me and would not let go. I knew it was both my greatest asset and my worst liability. Greer was correct, as much as it pained me to admit. Not every thread gets followed to its end. Life simply doesn't work that neatly. Still, I couldn't quite put it down. Toxicology came back with nothing unusual. Trace amounts of over-the-counter pain medication and an antidepressant. No substances that would explain the episode. That was all we got. The rest of the day moved uneventfully. I spent my evening walking the town for the first time without a professional lens over it. That was what I came here for, after all. The rocky lanes were lined with small family businesses, old churches, notice boards, and bed and breakfasts. It was everything I had wanted. For a little while, I felt like I was actually here. I was in bed by 10 and nearly asleep when my phone rang. Greer, where do you live? I'm coming to get you. It's 10:30, I said slowly. I'm aware. Get dressed. Can you tell me why? I got a call from Miss Evander. I sat up. Again? Greer, I can explain what the Paris trip most likely is. There's a sensitive element the mother doesn't know about, but if I can speak to her. A friend of hers saw Mara tonight, walking alone in the woods on the edge of town. I went cold. We drove out to the farm property at the edge of town, where an older woman named Helen opened her door narrowly before letting us in. She'd been out looking for a missing goat and had seen Mara clearly, she insisted. Barefoot, alone in the tree line, no coat. Gone before Helen could call out to her. You said you lost another goat, I noted. How many have you lost recently? 3 in the past month or so. Greer and I borrowed flashlights from the car and entered the woods. You really think it was her? Greer asked as we moved through the trees. I don't understand how it could be, but something is wrong. We were out there nearly an hour before I saw her. Just a hand around the side of a tree. Then half a face, watching me from the shadows. I called her name. She ran. I ran after her, calling out that we were police, that we only wanted to help. Greer followed, struggling to keep pace through the dense growth. I lost her in the dark. Within minutes, we found instead a trail of blood on the ground, which we followed to a larger pool. And above it, strung from a branch by its horns, a goat's head. Severed, the trees surrounding it were carved with symbols. Triangles, rough eyes, crosses, and pentagrams. Unmistakable. The goat's left eye had been removed and pressed into its fur in pale, hardened, opaque clumps. Candle wax. Forensics came out. We organized what we could that night. By the time Greer drove me home, it was well past midnight, and neither of us spoke much. I got out of the car and stood in the dark outside my building. What the hell is this? I finally said. I don't know, Greer replied, which frightened me more than any of his blustering ever had. But it's not nothing, and I don't like it. I want to look deeper into this. Into her. The online side. Of course you do, just... He paused. Be home when you're home, Ash. That's all I'm asking. And that night I watched more of Mara's videos. The old ones. The ones from before everything. She was genuinely magnetic. Not in the manufactured way that some people are online, but in the way of someone who actually enjoys people. She talked to her followers like they were sitting across from her. She remembered names. She laughed easily. Something in the newer content was missing. I couldn't name it precisely. A quality of presence. It was like the room was lit the same, but somehow the warmth was gone. One live stream from a few weeks before the Paris trip caught my eye. The thumbnail read, "Trying spooky sleepover games." Hello, my lovelies. Tonight we're doing some of those unsettling ritual games people have been sharing, the classic ones, and one new one that's been circulating. A brand new one. It's called the Candle Caine game. I sat up straight. She performed the others first. The usual internet mythology stuff. Then she sat at her desk with a single candle lit and a small mirror propped against her monitor. She closed her right eye, drew a slow circle on the mirror with her fingertip. Then she held her palm flat above the candle's flame and began to speak. Candle Caine walks in the candlelight. Can't wear skin, it is far too tight. He makes no sound, he leaves no tracks. Candle Caine lives in the candle wax. A toast to you this wondrous night. I hope to sate your appetite. One eye missing, one will remain. I now belong to Candle Caine. Emery's last words. She counted to 13 and blew out the candle. A moment of darkness. Then the lighter, in candlelight again. She looked around, smiled, and said she supposed it hadn't worked. The eye in her reflection was still there. No wax hand had appeared. But I was no longer thinking about the ritual. I was thinking about Emery, a middle-aged homeless man who somehow knew an obscure internet game. Had his niece shown it to him? That was the most reasonable explanation. The reasonable explanation was doing less and less work the further into this I got. I went to sleep with it unresolved. That night, for the first time, I dreamed about her. I was in my childhood bedroom. The door was closing slowly, and behind it, in the corner it concealed, stood a figure. A man. Wide-brimmed hat, dressed entirely in shadow. No features. He walked slowly toward me and I couldn't move. He held out a cup, ornate, gold, heavy-looking. He wanted me to drink from it. I looked inside and saw blood. In the blood, I saw my own reflection, and I was missing an eye. I screamed and couldn't make a sound. The room grew unbearably hot, and then I realized I wasn't sweating. I was melting. My skin was softening, bubbling, sliding off me, and the man had no face anymore. He had the severed head of the goat, one hollow socket where an eye should have been, and then it wasn't the man standing before me anymore. It was Mara. She was smiling, but wrong. Not her smile. She climbed onto the bed, cupped what remained of my face, and whispered something I couldn't hear. The fire took everything. I woke drenched in sweat, a piercing ache behind my left eye. The following days at work brought caseloads I could complete with one hand. Greer gave me grief about everything, with the persistence of a slow leak. I practiced stoicism. The ache behind my eye did not relent. It wasn't until we received a late-night call from Miss Evander. Her friend had seen Mara again in the woods, that the case reignited, back in the trees, back with flashlights, back searching. This time I found her. She was watching me from behind a tree, half her face visible in my beam. Same hair, same face, the same bright blue eyes I'd watched for hours in those videos. I called her name. She ran. We searched until Greer called time, and on our way back I told him what I'd seen. He was quiet for longer than I expected. "Flight records," he said finally. "Tomorrow." The records came back the following morning. Every passenger manifest, every flight from Halifax to Paris and back. Over a period of 3 months, Mara Evander's name did not appear once. She had never been in Paris. The next few days were devoted to building a picture of who Mara Evander actually was. Greer and I drove all over Millhaven. We spoke to her mother again, who was now simultaneously vindicated and devastated. We spoke to her former employer at a local diner, who confirmed that Mara had texted to take herself off the schedule 2 months prior and had not been in since. We spoke to her friends, consistent story. She still texted occasionally, short, impersonal messages. Nothing like her. We found her father through social media, a man called Donald, now living in Alberta with a remarried life. Our phone call was brief and callous. He had not seen Mara. He did not ask how serious the situation was. The tech team ran the videos. Results came back inconclusive. Not fully AI generated, but not clean either. Between 40 and 60% likelihood of tampering. The videos were real, they said, but altered. Something overlaid, something removed. Then Ben on the tech team showed us a single frame, Mara at a Parisian cafe, mid-laugh, hair swinging. In the motion blur, one clear frame, her left eye socket was empty, not a trick of the light, not a smudge, an empty socket, the suggestion of red tissue within. That night I couldn't sleep. I went back to her deleted videos. She'd had 3 taken down. I found them on an archival channel, cross-referencing timestamps. The first was a mental health video from 3 years ago. She spoke about her medications, antidepressants, anti-seizure medication for a long history of severe migraines. She spoke about it easily, with humor. Anytime I felt a migraine coming on at school, she said, everyone would act like the sky was falling, like I was an omen. I'd say, "I'm sorry, it's starting." And they'd all get so dramatic about it. Some of them called me Carrie. She laughed. The headaches were like a fireplace poker directly behind my eye every time. A fireplace poker behind the eye. I had felt it every single morning since this case began. The second deleted video was from 10 months prior. "Have you ever had a recurring nightmare?" she asked. I knew. Before she said another word, I knew. "There was this man in a hat," she continued. "I'd be paralyzed, and he'd come toward me with this golden chalice, and he'd want me to drink from it. But it was full of..." I paused the video, sat with it, It was my dream, exactly my dream. Down to the chalice, the third video posted and deleted the week before the Paris trip, an unboxing stream. She opened fan mail with her usual delight until she reached an unmarked rectangular box. "This looks expensive," she said, lifting its contents. "Some kind of medieval-looking chalice? Oh my God, this is real. Who sent this?" She turned it in her hands, brow furrowing. "I feel like I've seen this before. It reminds me of something from a long time ago." I closed the laptop. The chalice was real. The man in the hat was real. Mara had been dreaming about him since childhood, and someone had sent her the object from that dream. She hadn't stumbled into this. She'd been placed in the center of it from the beginning. I didn't recover the sleep I needed. I arrived the next morning looking, by Greer's assessment, like something left on a roadside. "You're doing the online thing, aren't you?" he said flatly. "I have a lead I'm waiting to hear back on." "A lead?" He didn't sound convinced. "You know what? Fine. We've got the search organized. 8 of us, heading out in 30 minutes. I bought a bagel and met the group at the field behind Helen's farm. Greer laid out our sectors. We paired off and went in. Sector C with Greer. 1 hour of dense walking, no findings, walkie-talkie static, and his eventually asking where I grew up just to make time pass faster. "What brought you here?" I asked him eventually. "From New York." He was quiet for a moment. "I could ask you the same." I wanted a different kind of life. The sky, the air, that's most of it. He seemed to accept that. "I'll tell you mine sometime." "You always say that." "I always mean it eventually." A crackle came through the walkie. Then screaming, distorted, followed by, "Officer down, Sector A. Need assistance now." We ran. When we arrived, one of our officers, Denning, was slumped against a tree, his colleague kneeling over him. Deep lacerations to the neck. A wide, discolored burn along the opposite side of his face, and on the burned skin, candle wax, still warm, still liquid. I knelt close and looked into Denning's eyes to keep him present and calm. Instead, his pupils dilated and he began to flail, pushing at me, gurgling, terrified. Not of the pain, of me. I stood back. Greer caught my eye. Neither of us understood it. I saw movement in the trees behind Denning's shoulder. Far off, indistinct. But there, Denning was being cared for. The call had been made. I made a decision. "I ran," Greer shouted after me. I ignored him. The movement through the trees was consistent, ahead of me. I followed sound when sight failed. I crashed through undergrowth, branches cutting at my face, and then my foot caught a root and I went down hard. My face met a tree trunk on the way, and then the ground. I lay there for a while. I'm not entirely sure how long. The light through the canopy changed. My head pounded in ways I could not properly describe. When I finally felt something on my cheek, the softest possible touch, a hand, slender and careful. I thought I was dreaming. Warm breath, close to my face, moving slowly as though studying me. Then something wet at my chin, sliding upward. I forced my eyes open. She was inches away. Mara, exactly as she had appeared in the altered footage. Emaciated, skin like old chalk, left eye socket hollow and dark. Her mouth was red with my blood. She was smiling, but not at all in the way she used to smile. Her hands found my throat. I looked into her remaining eye, trying to find some trace of the person I had watched for hours. And something happened. Her grip faltered. Her smile slipped. She looked uncertain, confused. She looked, for just a fraction of a second, afraid. Then the grip resumed. Greer's voice crashed through the trees. She released me and slipped away. He found me a minute later, out of breath, furious, and, underneath all of it, genuinely relieved. He helped me to my feet. The world rotated unpleasantly. "She was here," I said. It was her, left eye. It was gone. Not hidden, not swollen, gone. "Are you sure you didn't?" "I'm sure." I looked at him steadily. "She isn't just missing. Something has been done to her. She isn't who she was." He didn't argue. For the first time, he didn't argue. "We have to get out of these woods." He held my arm and we walked. Gray drove and I held myself together in the passenger seat. The silence between us was useful. It let me organize thoughts that kept trying to scatter. At some point he said, "You need food." He was right. We stopped at a local pizza place. Hand-painted sign, warm light inside, a young man with kind eyes named Ben, who clearly knew Greer well. The pizza was extraordinary in the way that simple things sometimes are when you need them most. Greer, while we ate, told me how he'd come to Millhaven. Street kid from the Bronx, taken in by a man named Obi who ran a restaurant and asked nothing in return but that he get clean. He did. Obi eventually wanted to move east. Greer came with him, and they opened this place. Then something happened to Obi. Greer didn't elaborate, only said it was a bad man a long time ago. And Greer had wanted to do something different after that. Something that honored the way Obi had lived. He didn't say it was about making up for lost time. He didn't have to. On the way back, I told him about the videos, about the chalice, about the dream, the hat, the man, the cup that Mara had described in exact detail a year before I ever set foot in this province. He didn't laugh. She dreamed the same thing you're dreaming. Yes. And the chalice was sent to her as a gift. Yes. From someone who knew she would recognize it. That's what I believe. He nodded slowly. Thought for a long time. Who wore a wide-brimmed hat around here? Realistically, someone she would have known as a child? I had already pulled up what Mara's mother had told me. Her mother mentioned a priest who taught at her nursery school. Strict, formal man, very old-fashioned. He wore a distinctive hat. What was his name? Whitaker. Roy Whitaker. Greer's hands tightened on the steering wheel. As in the Blessings soup kitchen. As in, we went to Whitaker's house the next morning. Small, unassuming, barely a step above spare. He answered the door with a composure that felt deliberate, like a man who had been expecting to answer for something and had decided to enjoy it. I made it through perhaps 30 seconds of professional questioning before I abandoned it entirely. What did you do to her? I said quietly. Greer inhaled sharply beside me. Whitaker tilted his head. What makes you think I had anything to do with it? I know you did. A smile pulled at the corner of his mouth. Thin, unhurried. It doesn't matter now. What's been done is done. Tell me what you did to her. You're too late. And then he said, without any ceremony at all, almost cheerfully, I confess. Arrest me. I drew my weapon. Greer was yelling at me to step back. Whitaker knelt compliant, hands behind his back, still smiling as he spoke. She was always our lamb, born to a greater purpose, and now that purpose is complete. He let out a slow breath, almost reverent. She was the key. He will have new skin. He will have eyes. My candle is burned out. He produced a blade from somewhere. I don't know where. And Greer's shout of pain was instantaneous. I fired. The shot was precise, and it was final. Greer clutched his hand. The wound was bad, but not fatal. He looked at me with an expression I'd never seen from him before. Not anger, not frustration. Genuine distress. What aren't you telling me? He said. So I told him. About the dreams. About my left eye, which I had not looked at closely enough to say what I was afraid it had become. About the feeling that the case was somehow inside me, not just around me. He listened. He didn't speak for a long time. I'm not going to have you committed, he said finally. But you should have told me. Partners don't hold this stuff back. I know. I can feel it too. I've been in this place long enough to know when something is genuinely wrong with the air. What have you seen? In 30 years here? Stories for another time. He exhaled. Right now, I need to know one thing. What? Who sent her the chalice? Whitaker's house yielded almost nothing. No computer, no paper trail significant enough to answer our central question. He didn't own a smartphone. He barely used email by all accounts. So who had built the false online presence? Who had generated those altar videos? Who had sent Mara the chalice with enough precision to know it would mean something to her? That night I was nearly asleep when something fell from my desk. A container of thumbtacks. Hundreds of them across the floor. I climbed out of bed to sweep them up and was reaching under the bed frame when a hand clamped around my ankle. What followed was the worst 30 minutes of my life, and I have had some genuinely terrible ones. I won't detail all of it. There was a masked figure, tall and lean, in black from head to toe. There were the tacks, many of them. There was my face against the floor, and then eventually, against everything, a window in which I could act. I bit down on the hand holding my gun, drew blood, reclaimed the weapon, and fired. A graze. He fled. I called Greer. I dropped the phone. The paramedics came. Later, Greer came too. Furious at the hospital's security, frantic underneath the bluster, and determined to get me out of there somewhere safer. Before I passed out in that apartment, I saw one thing clearly. The eyes behind the mask. A particular shade of blue. Familiar. Unmistakably Mara's shade of blue, which she hadn't inherited from her mother. Her father, Donald, had never been in Alberta. The next morning, from a hospital bed I hadn't asked to be in, I told Greer this. He looked at me for a long moment, then pulled out his phone and began making calls. That same night, Greer received the news that Evander had been found dead in her home. The official report would call it a home invasion. The body had been photographed. The photograph had been posted briefly to Mara's public profile before being taken down. So had a second photograph of Mara herself, smiling, holding the weapon. Hollow socket, emaciated, unrecognizable. I looked at it once. I did not look again. She didn't do this, I said to Greer. I know, he replied, and he meant it. That night I dreamed of a beach. Mara was sitting beside me. Not the awful version, but her, the real one. She looked out at the water and apologized to me. For all of it, for the eye, for the nightmares, for the danger she hadn't intended to put me in. I just wanted someone to see what was happening, she said. I just needed someone to find me. I will, I told her. I'll still find you. She turned to look at me, and there was something in her expression that made me feel unsteady in a way that had nothing to do with fear. She said, after all this, you should let yourself be happy. And then she said something that made me laugh, even in a dream. I would have pushed you onto a dance floor, whether you wanted to be there or not. I don't really dance, I said. Yes, you do, she said. You just haven't done it yet. Greer discharged me from the hospital against medical advice, the way you do when the hospital stops being the safest place in the building. He drove me around the dark roads while we assembled what we had: Whitaker, Donald Evander, the Church of the Father. The article on Benji's website, Benji, who Greer had introduced me to at the pizza place, and who ran an exhaustive catalog of every strange thing that had happened in these eastern provinces since anyone started writing it down, had given me the missing piece. Fraser Caine, a man from the 60s, raised religious, who'd broken from the church in childhood after his father left and become devoted instead to an entity he called simply the Father. He'd grown into a cult leader with a compound in the county. His followers were charged in 3 deaths. Young women, their skin destroyed by molten wax. He'd called them attempts. He'd taken his own life in 1995 to avoid arrest. An unmarked grave somewhere nearby. Someone had dug it up. He makes no sound. He leaves no tracks. Candle Caine lives in the candle wax, not a ghost, not metaphor. Caine himself, his consciousness, his presence. Whatever fragment had been kept alive on the other side of whatever door the cult had opened, waiting, directing, speaking through Whitaker for decades, shaping one particular life toward one particular end, because the women before had been attempts, and Mara was something else. She'd been dosed since childhood, the chalice at the nursery school, medicinal compounds layered into the things she consumed over years, biology and iconography combined. She'd developed abilities as a result, even if she'd never known what they were. The migraines that preceded disasters, the premonitions, the dreams, the game was designed to be found by her specifically, to complete an activation that would finish what had been started decades ago. Her blood, once changed, was stronger, strong enough to let Caine anchor himself back into physical form, to let him feed. What he could not do was hold it. He could wear wax but not skin. He needed a vessel that was more than human, and they had spent years building her into one. Greer listened to all of this without interruption. Then he said, So Donald Evander is still in Millhaven. In the basement of Blessings, I said. I'd bet everything on it. And Caine is there too. Yes. And you want to go tonight? There is no other option. A long silence. One way, he said. One way. He drove me to my apartment, waited outside while I changed and recovered my gun. Then we headed for the soup kitchen. We rode through the dark in Greer's old car. He wouldn't let me choose a song, which I pointed out was exactly the problem with him. He pointed out that it was his car and therefore his radio. We went back and forth on this for 3 full minutes, and I cannot tell you why it made the drive more bearable. Only that it did. Blessings. White building. Dark inside. The sign in the window said, closed. I picked the lock. We went in, through the dining area, through the kitchen, a door in the back locked, then open, and a wooden staircase leading down into dark. Let me go first, Greer said. You always? I'm a better shield. You're too small. Someone shoots through you, they get us both. I let him go first. The basement was a lived-in space. Concrete floor, patch ceiling, a kitchenette, a bed, a small bathroom. And in the corner, a custom-built PC. 2 monitors, a tower that cost more than everything else in the room combined, a high-end graphics processor, enough processing power to render and alter video footage indefinitely. I woke the screen, password protected. I tried several possibilities. None worked. He's not here, Greer said. Mara's not here. Then we wait, a creak, a hidden panel in the far wall, and out of it, Donald Evander. He looked like his social media photo, but worse. Shadowed, exhausted, glasses crooked. We had guns up before he could speak. He raised his hands and looked genuinely terrified. Wait, he said. Wait, please, you shouldn't be here. What's behind that panel? Greer demanded. Where is your daughter? I said over him. He trembled. I didn't know. Not at first. Whitaker, he was my closest friend. He told me she was special, chosen, that she would survive what was coming, that we would survive with her, that what we were doing would protect her. I believed him. His voice cracked. What came back to us wasn't her. That thing isn't her. And I couldn't stop it. If I moved against Whitaker, against Caine, they would have known. So I stayed. I kept the cameras running. I built the videos. I tried to stay close enough to protect her. He looked at me, and his eyes, Mara's eyes, were full of grief. And then he had me try to kill you. His voice dropped to almost nothing. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to. I'm sorry for all of it. The door, I said. Take us through it. A stone staircase, orange light below. We turned right at the base and stepped into something I will not forget for the rest of my life. A shrine built into the stone, carved arches lined in flaking gold, tapestries and symbols from a dozen traditions, all arranged as though they were different dialects of the same language. Candles everywhere, hundreds of them, illuminating a long rectangular room that ended at a stone slab at the center. On the slab, Mara, in a white gown, lying on her back, still wearing the smile that was not hers. Above her, feeding from the hollow of her eye socket, a figure that was almost human in silhouette and not at all in detail. Pale as old wax, translucent in places, its edges undefined and slowly dripping. Like something that had been poured into a roughly human shape and had not quite set properly. He can't wear skin. It is far too tight. Greer made a sound I had never heard from him before. I could not look away. Whatever was in that room, it was real. It had been real for a long time, and it was not finished. Donald looked at me across the candlelit dark, and something in his face changed. I watched it happen. He looked at my left eye. He looked at his daughter. He looked back at me. He believed I could bring her back. He broke from Greer's grip and ran. He collided with the thing before it could reorient. He grabbed it, pulled it from her, screaming words that had no form. Just voice. Just desperation. Greer went in to help him. I ran to Mara. I pulled her from the slab and dragged her to the corner. She looked at me with that hollow smile and murmured the words to the rhyme like a lullaby. I understood somehow what had to be done. I understood it the way you understand things in the space between a dream and waking. Without logic, purely, I produced the last hairpin from my pocket. The rest I will not describe at length. I want it on record, in this journal that is my own, that no one asked me to write it, that it was the worst physical thing I have ever done to myself. But it was done, and when I pressed her eye back into place and folded her lids closed over it, she began to shake. And then, slowly, she came back. I will not describe what happened to Donald at the other end of that room. I'm glad I was not looking directly at it. What I will say is that Mara, when she came back fighting. She got to her feet. She had the chalice. Her hand was bleeding into it. She forced it into Caine's mouth. Her own blood, purified now, wholeness restored, was poisonous to what had been made from her corruption. It rejected him. It began to change him, and the change was killing him. Greer grabbed us both and moved us toward the stairs. I paused at the computer long enough to pull the hard drive from the tower. Evidence. The only evidence that might explain any of this to anyone who wasn't in that room. Greer grabbed cooking oil from the kitchen above. I lit a candle. I dropped it on the oil. We went out through the front door. I could feel the heat from the building 30 seconds later. Greer drove us a few streets away and stopped. For a long moment, none of us said anything. Then Mara said quietly, "I love this town." Greer laughed. An actual laugh, tired and real. "You've been to 914s? A few years ago." "Didn't you work there?" "Started the place." He paused. "Name's Wally, by the way." He looked at me sidelong. "See? Everybody knows everybody." We sat on the hood of the car. He brought out slices. 3 of them in case she was hungry, he said, though I noticed he also eyed the spare one carefully. Mara and I sat together after he went inside to speak to Ben. Neither of us said anything for a while. There was too much and also nothing at all. "Nice to meet you," I finally offered. "Properly, I mean." She smiled. For the first time, it was her smile. "Nice to meet you too, Daria." The tears came after that. Hers first, then mine, which surprised me. We held each other in the parking lot and cried in a way that I do not have words adequate to explain. Grief and relief and exhaustion all at once. Months of accumulated weight. When we finally came apart, she wiped her face and then mine, and then noticed the mess she'd made of my shirt, and apologized. I said it was fine. I'd already lost a better one. "What were you going to do?" she asked. "After all this," I thought about it honestly. "I think I'm going to go dancing," I said. She looked at me for a moment, understood immediately. "It's a date," she said. As of the writing of this final entry, several months after the events above, I can confirm the following. I kept my job barely. The hard drive vindicated enough to make the conversation very long and uncomfortable rather than criminal. Greer kept his too, though he would never admit he fought for either of us. The building is gone. There is no body. There is no recovered grave. There are things in this story that I will never be able to put on a report. There are also things that will never go on a report because they belong only to me. My apartment is fully unpacked. The boxes are all open.